The Whisper in the Dark, Part 1. My friend Paul's house was, beyond a reasonable doubt, haunted. The house was well over a century old and located in a woodsy suburb. Paul and his entire family had experiences there, and eventually, so did I. During high school, while my parents were on vacation, I stayed at Paul's house for a few days. One morning, I woke up to a whisper directly in my ear. My name. You need to leave. Now. The voice wasn't malicious. It felt more like a warning. Immediately, I thought Paul was playing a prank on me, but when I turned to my right, where he was sleeping, he was completely out cold. I said, "What?" thinking he was joking, but he didn't respond. Then it hit me. The whisper came from my left ear, and Paul was on my right. Paul often experienced sleep paralysis in that same room. He told me he frequently saw demons, and more disturbingly, the standing fan by his bed would sometimes appear as a demon girl. He would wake up in a panic, having punched or thrown the fan across the room. He also mentioned seeing someone standing in the closet that his bed faced, both in his dreams and while awake. Interestingly, his sleep paralysis ceased entirely when he moved out of that house. That second floor of the house, where Paul and his family slept, always gave me an unsettling feeling. One of his sisters claimed to have seen the ghost of a little boy in their bathroom, and their mother once opened her closet to find the same little boy standing inside, looking up at her and asking for his mom. That story creeped me out more than any of Paul's pranks. It's scarier when adults experience these things too. The Whisper in the Dark, Part 2. Initially, I thought Paul was just messing with me, and so did most of our friends. That was until others started having their own experiences. One of our mutual friends, who helped take care of Paul's dogs when his family was away, once heard a blood-curdling scream from the living room while she was feeding the dogs in the kitchen. She bolted outside with the dogs, checked the house, and found no one. When she called Paul, he casually replied, "Yeah, shit like that happens sometimes." Another friend, who was a complete skeptic and used to mock all of us for believing the house was haunted, had his own eerie encounter. Paul hosted parties frequently, and one night, this friend went upstairs alone to grab a drink. As he passed the dining room, he saw a tall, grim woman standing on the porch, staring at him through the window. Her features were featureless and blurry, and something felt disturbingly off about her presence. When he looked away for just a second and then looked back, she was gone. Later, when he told Paul, Paul simply nodded and said, "We've all seen her before." Even the basement, which we used to hang out and party in, was terrifying. One summer, Paul invited us over to help clean out old junk, and that's when we discovered a hidden storage closet none of us knew existed. Inside, we found a collection of strange vintage items, including a creepy old music box. None of us touched it, but weeks later, when Paul and another friend were cleaning again, the music box started playing by itself, while the closet was shut. They hadn't even opened it that day. They ran up the stairs, leaving everything behind. The Whisper in the Dark, Part 3. The attic, where Paul's older sisters had their bedrooms, was perhaps the most haunted part of the house. One night, his second oldest sister had an intensely vivid dream where she was being exorcised. She dreamt that a group of priests surrounded her, shouting verses as she convulsed violently. She woke up screaming, and at that precise moment, the rosary that hung on her wall flew off, crashed to the ground, and shattered into pieces. She was drenched in sweat and terrified. No one else was in the room. But the strange occurrences in the attic didn't stop there. Paul's eldest sister often complained of hearing whispers coming from inside the walls at night. Faint, unintelligible voices that seemed to move around her room. Sometimes, she would wake up to the feeling of someone gently tugging at her blankets, only to find nothing there but the lingering scent of something rotten. One night, she swore she saw a figure crouched in the corner of her room, staring at her with hollow eyes that reflected no light. When she blinked, it was gone. But she refused to sleep in that room alone after that. Another terrifying incident involved their youngest sister, who would wake up in the middle of the night crying, claiming that a man with no face stood by her bed. Their mother dismissed it as night terrors, until she herself awoke to the sound of slow, deliberate footsteps pacing outside her door late one night. When she mustered the courage to open it, the hallway was empty, but the air was thick with the smell of burnt wood. Years later, after they finally moved out of the house, Paul's family discovered something horrifying while packing up the attic. Hidden beneath a loose floorboard was a dusty, leather-bound journal filled with strange symbols and passages in a language no one could identify. The final entry, written in shaky handwriting, simply read, "It watches. It waits. It knows we see it. After years of hearing these stories and experiencing some of the strange occurrences myself, I am convinced Paul's house was undeniably haunted. Whether it was the whispers, the shadowy figures, or objects moving on their own, something dark lingered in that home, and it still chills me to think about it today.